Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your man Soul here. Welcome back to the channel. You know what it is when you clicked it. Today we are doing the Frost Mage talent build setup for Wrath of the Lich King Classic, patch 335. And before we jump into the video, I do want to say thank you to all of the new subscribers and people who've been viewing and commenting on my channel. Thank you for help growing the community as we make it down that long road to 1K. And if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to hit that like. And if you want to stay with me and continue to see more content, don't forget to hit that subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump on into the video. So first things first, we have Ice Flows, reduces the cooldown of your Frost Nova, Cone of Cold, Ice Block, and Icy Veins by 20%. Obviously, if you've seen my Fire and my Arcane videos, you know how really good this talent is. Having frequent access to Ice Block, and if you have spec into Icy Veins, having more access to Icy Veins is pretty good. So definitely pick up Ice Flows. Next, we have Improved Frostbolt, which is ultimately the same effect as the Improved Fireball. It's going to reduce the cast time of your Frostbolt spell by half a second. Having more casts of Frostbolt means more damage, which means you're going to be doing more DPS, so definitely pick up Improved Frostbolt. Next, we have Precision. This is going to reduce the mana cost and increase your chance to hit with spells by 3%. Two things that you love as a caster, definitely pick up. Next, we have Ice Shards. Increases the critical strike damage bonus of your frost spells by 100%. This is a very important talent that you should not skip, as it works very well with the next talent upcoming called Shatter, which we will get to in a little bit, but definitely do not skip Ice Shards. It is a very, very good talent. Next, we have Piercing Ice. Increases the damage bonus of your frost spells by 6%. Pretty cut and dry. Next, we have Icy Veins, one of the staples of the Frost Tree. Increases the spell casting speed of by 20% and reduces the pushback suffered from damaging attacks while casting by 100% on a 3-minute cooldown, lasts 20 seconds. Again, one of your bread and butter cooldowns, definitely pick up. Next, we have Arctic Reach. Increases the range of your Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Deep Freeze, and Blizzard spells by 20%, along with Frost Nova and Cone of Cold. You guys know how I feel about range increases. I think range increases are really good. Arctic Reach is no different. Definitely pick up. Next, we have Frost Channeling. Reduces the mana cost of all spells by 10% and reduces the threat caused by frost spells by 10%. Again, pretty cut and dry, two things that you like. Next, we have one of the big ones, Shatter. Increases the critical strike chance of all of your spells against frozen targets by 50%. Now, in a little bit, as we get down the tree, we're going to talk about how you make a target frozen or chilled, but because of this talent is what makes Ice Shards really great, because obviously if you're attacking frozen or chilled targets, you're going to be critting more often because of the 50% increase, which means your crit's going to be hitting harder due to Ice Shards. So definitely pick up Shatter. Next, we have Cold Snap. When activated, this finishes the cooldown of all frost spells you recently cast, so on an 8-minute cooldown. So basically, if you used Ice Block, if you use Icy Veins, if you use Frost Nova, and they're on cooldown and you hit Cold Snap, it's going to reset all those cooldowns. So kind of like a Frost Mage version of Readiness that the Hunters have. So it's a really, really important cooldown to really follow up on, like a double immunity if you need to soak something, or if you need to push a damage phase and you want to have another access to Icy Veins. So it's really, really important. Do not skip Cold Snap. I do want to make an honorable mention to Frozen Core. This is going to reduce all the damage you take from all spells by 2% or 6% when you max it out. This is one of the optional talents we'll talk about. Now, I've seen builds that take this 3 out of 3 and skip other things. I'm choosing not to skip Frozen Core only because I feel like the 6% spell damage increase isn't really impactful unless you are taking consistent and static spell damage across the majority of the raid fight. You kind of lose value putting 3 talent points into this talent, in my opinion. But I've seen builds where you take it. I'm choosing to skip it, but you can use it as a case-by-case basis. Next, we have Winter's Chill. Increases your chance to critically hit with Frostbolt by an additional 3% and gives your frost damage spells a 100% chance to apply the Winter's Chill effect, which increases the chance that spells will critically hit the target by 1% for 15 seconds, stacking 5 times. So basically, it gives you a flat increase to your Frostbolt critical strike chance by 3%. And while you're attacking, it's going to give the target a stacking 5% crit chance. Really important. Obviously, crit is important due to the Ice Shards talent. So this is a really good talent. Do not skip. Next, we have Cold as Ice. Reduces the cooldown of your Cold Snap, Ice Berry, and Summon Elemental by 20%. So obviously, if you have more access to Cold Snap, you're going to be able to reset and get big cooldowns again. So definitely take Cold as Ice. Next, we have Ice Barrier. Instantly shields you, absorbing some damage with a 1-minute duration. While the shield holds, spellcasting will not be delayed by damage. Now, in some builds, kind of like Frozen Core, I've seen people skip Ice Barrier. While it doesn't really do anything impactful in terms of your damage, I think it's a pretty decent defensive cooldown. Like, when you get some gear, because the absorb effect scales with your spell power, it can absorb a fair amount and it can save your life in sketchy situations where you might not have blink or you might not have ice blocks. So I like Ice Barrier, but it to each his own. If you want to skip Ice Barrier because you know you can make the pro gamer moves when you need to, by all means, but I'm going to choose to take Ice Barrier. Next, we have Arctic Winds. Increases all frost damage you cause by 5% and reduces the chance melee and ranged attacks will hit you by 5%. Now, that latter effect is really for PvP scenarios, but the flat 5% increase to frost damage, that's pretty good. So you definitely want to max out Arctic Winds. Next, we have Fingers of Frost. Gives your chill effect a 15% chance to grant you the Fingers of Frost effect, which treats your next 2 cast spells as if the targets were frozen, meaning they will definitely get the shatter effect, which means they have a higher chance to be a crit, which means they're getting the ice shards effect. You see how this all culminates? So definitely pick up Fingers of Frost. Next, we have Empowered Frostbolt. Increases the damage of your Frostbolt spell by an amount equal to 10% of your spell power and reduces the cast time even further by 0.2 seconds. So again, allowing you to fill more Frostbolts into your rotation and giving them a higher spell power coefficient through your spell power. So definitely take Empowered Frostbolt. Next, we have another staple of the Frost Tree, that's Summon Water Elemental. Summons a Water Elemental to fight for you for 45 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. Now, the Water Elemental is a pretty powerful cooldown with the 45-second uptime, so really like a 2-minute and 15-second cooldown. It has its own freeze, which is a ranged Frost Nova, which means you can, on adds at the very least, you can get another effect that will cause your shatter. So definitely get Summon Water Elemental. Next, we have Brain Freeze. Your frost damage spells with chilling effects have a 15% chance to cause your next Fireball or Frostfire Bolt to be an instant cast and cost no mana. So kinda like the Frost Mage version of Hot Streak, but in this case it's using Frostfire Bolt as the spender, which can hit very, very hard, so you definitely want to pick up Brain Freeze. Next, we have Chill to the Bone. Increases the damage caused by your Frostbolt, Frostfire Bolt, and Ice Lance spells by 5% and reduces the movement of speed of chilled targets by an additional 10%. So giving you a little bit more control with the increased snare and increasing your damage by 5% with Frostbolt, Frostfire Bolt, and Ice Lance. I don't think I've said one bad thing about any of the penultimate talents, like the talents that come right before the capstone talent, because for the most part, across these specs, they're all pretty good. Maybe I'll find a spec that you don't take it, or maybe you don't max it out, who knows, but definitely max out Chill to the Bone. And then last but not least, we have Deep Freeze. Stuns the target for 5 seconds, only usable on frozen targets, deals permanent damage to targets that are immune to stuns. So another thing I saw with the Frost Mage talents is that some people were skipping Deep Freeze, and I couldn't understand why. It clearly has usage on mobs that aren't considered bosses because it's a 5-second stun, and it clearly has usage on bosses because it does a lot of damage, especially when it crits. So I don't understand the skipping of Deep Freeze, but I will say this, in this talent build, obviously I took it, so I think you should definitely take it because Deep Freeze is a hard-hitting nuke. So definitely want to take Deep Freeze. And that's really it for the mainstay Frost talents. I kind of picked out some talents, like I talked about Frozen Core, talked about Ice Barrier, talked about Deep Freeze. There is one more I do want to bring light to, and that's Enduring Winter. So first, let's talk about what it does. Increases the duration of your Summon Water Elemental by 5 seconds or 15 seconds when you max it out. And your Frostbolt spell has a 33% chance or a 100% chance when maxed out to grant up to 10 party or raid members the replenishment effect, which is the 1% of their maximum mana every 5 seconds. Now, the reason why I skipped this talent is for 2 reasons. Number 1, as a Frost Mage, you're definitely going to be using Glyph of Eternal Winter. Now, normally I save glyphs for near the end of the video, but in this case I want to talk about it. Glyph of Eternal Winter makes your Water Elemental a permanent pet, so you can remove the 45-second duration. It's always there. It still has a 3-minute cooldown, so if it dies before the cooldown's up, you gotta just wait the timer out, but it's permanent. It's here to stay. Because of this glyph, the duration increase doesn't really matter because it's a permanent pet. It doesn't matter now, it's here forever, right? And then the second part, the replenishment effect is pretty good, but you can bet your bottom dollar, you can bet your firstborn that there's going to be somebody in your raid group, whether it be 10 or 25, that's going to be able to provide the replenishment effect. Now, if you want to be that, you can definitely take Enduring Winter, because like I said before, Frost is pretty flexible with some of the talent spreads, right? But in this case, like in a 25-man raid group, you really don't need Enduring Winter. You can take those points and put them elsewhere. So that's what I've chosen to do here, but I did want to talk about it. All right, let's go into the Arcane subspec here. So first things first, we have Arcane Focus. Increases your chance to hit and reduces the mana cost of your arcane spells by 3%. Obviously, we don't really care about the arcane mana cost reduction, but 3% free hit is 3% free hit. Definitely gotta love that. Next, we have Arcane Subtlety. Reduces the chance your helpful spells and damage over time effects will be dispelled by 30%, and reduces the threat caused by your arcane spells by 40%. So neither of these effects really matter too much for Frost Mage. I think this is more just a means to an end. This is kind of the best of a bad situation, because Arcane Subtlety has some uses over the Arcane Stability talent, which you're never going to cast Arcane Missiles or Arcane Blast. So you pick your poison, and Arcane Subtlety is the least of the poisons, so we take that to get down the tree. Next, we have Arcane Concentration. Gives you a 10% chance of entering Clear Casting State. Clear Casting State, obviously you know what that is, guys. It's going to reduce the mana cost of your next damaging spell by 100%. Next, we have Spell Impact. So this talent, the reason why you didn't max it out, really, again, it's more of a means to an end to get down the tree, but at least this actually does something for you. So it's going to increase the damage of your Arcane Explosion, Arcane Blast, Blast Wave, Fire Blast, Scorch, Fireball, Ice Lance, and Cone of Cold spells by 4%. Now, Ice Lance and Cone of Cold aren't too rotational, but they still are used, especially Ice Lance. So increasing the damage by 4%, you know, it doesn't hurt. So definitely put 2 out of 3 here. Next, we have Student of the Mind. It's going to increase your total spirit by 10% because we're using Molten Armor, which gives critical strike rating based off of 35% of our spirit. Increasing our spirit is going to give us more critical strike. So get Student of the Mind, and if you don't know, as a caster, you're at some point going to have spirit on your gear. Some BIS pieces have spirit on it. It's just the nature of the beast. So definitely want to turn as much of spirit you got into crit. So definitely take Student of the Mind. Next, we have Focus Magic. Increases the target's critical strike chance by 3%. This is a one-person buff that you put on somebody who you pick your favorite crit guy. And when they get a crit, your chance to critically hit will be increased by 3%. So again, put it on your favorite person. Put it on a Boomkin, put it on a Resto Shaman, put it on another mage. But just make sure the person that you're buffing gets consistent critical strikes with spells. Not melee attacks, just spells. And you'll have a high uptime on this buff. And then last but not least, we have Torment the Weak. So your Frostbolt, Fireball, Frost Firebolt, Pyroblast, Arcane Missiles, Arcane Blast, Arcane Barrage deal 12% more damage to snared or slow targets. Obviously, as a Frost Mage, you're going to be doing a lot of snaring, a lot of slowing, a lot of movement control. So Torment the Weak, at least for ads anyway, should always be active, right? And that's really it for the, the PvE Arcane spec. The PvE Frost spec with the subspec of Arcane. But I do want to, touch base on some things, especially like certain things with the glyphs. But yeah, this isn't going to be too different from what you may see out there. Like if you do your own research and you want to look into Frost, like this isn't a terribly variant or varied build. Because, I mean, yeah, I skipped Frozen Core. I did not skip Deep Freeze or Ice Barrier. And like I said before, some specs might have you take Ice Barrier, some specs might not have you take Ice Barrier. Same thing with Deep Freeze. I chose to take them because I think they're really good. Some specs take Enduring Winter for the replenishment, like who knows. But I think this is a pretty good straightforward build for you to follow. In terms of glyphs, I already talked about a glyph of Eternal Winter, so we don't have to harp on that, but that's pretty much a mandatory glyph. Next one is Molten Armor. I think across all mage specs, you just want Molten Armor. That's another like mandatory glyph. The flex spot to me is Glyph of Frostbolt. So Glyph of Frostbolt increases the damage dealt by Frostbolt by 5%, but removes its slowing effect. Now, the slowing effect is kind of what you need to get chilled, which affects your shatter, which is also affected by ice shards, right? But you have Frost Firebolt for that. Like Frost Firebolt still puts a snare. It's not as strong of a snare. I think Frostbolt, the regular Frostbolt, is 50%, and Frost Firebolt is 40%, but it has a dot component, instead of being a 10% stronger snow, which I think is a fair trade-off, right? So you might net higher gains with Glyph of Frostbolt, but there's also the glyph of Frostfire Bolt. Let me see. Now, glyph of Frostfire Bolt increases the initial damage, so just the hit, not the dot. The initial damage of Frostbolt or Frostfire Bolt this way, sorry, by 2%, which is almost half of the cost or half of the damage bonus of the glyph of Frostbolt, and it increases a critical strike chance by 2%. So effectively, you could kind of look at it as 2.5, like a flat 2.5 damage increase to Frostfire Bolt if you kind of average out the crits, yada yada yada. Now, I think this glyph is dependent on how much crit you have, because 2% isn't a lot, but it still might be a lot if you already have a lot of crit. Like, you know how crit has increasing gains. The more you have, the more you're gonna crit, right? If a person has 20% crit, they're gonna crit less than a person who has 40% crit. So if you have a lot of crit, this might be the one to go for you. Plus, you're gonna be using Frostfire Bolt with Brain Freeze procs, so it's not like you're not gonna use it. The 2% initial damage is good. But I always just say it's just dependent on gear levels. Maybe early on start with the glyph of Frostbolt, and then as you get more gear, as you get more haste, as you get more crit, you switch to glyph of Frostfire Bolt, because, you know, it has 2 components. It increases the damage by 2% and its crit chance by 2%. So that's what I would say about that. One thing I do want to talk about is why Frost Mages don't go into the subtree. I don't know if this is going to be a real thing. This might just be common knowledge for what I'm about to say, but just in case somebody doesn't know, the fire tree doesn't really have anything. Some people might say, oh yeah, you can get like ignite, and because Frostfire Bolt is technically a fire and a frost spell, it would proc ignite. But here's the problem. Let me show you real quick. See if I can find it. Frostfire Bolt. There we go. So Frostfire Bolt, like I said, in the school, it is a fire and a frost spell, so it would proc ignite. But the issue is the second part of the tooltip. So it launches a bolt of frostfire at the enemy, causing some damage, slowing them by 40%, and causing an additional 90 fire damage over 9 seconds. If the target is more vulnerable to frost damage, this spell will cause frost damage instead of fire damage. So what that means is if you have a modifier that increases frost damage taken, this spell is going to do frost damage, even though it's part of the frost and the fire school. And guess what Frost Mages have? They have a talent called Arctic Winds, which you definitely max out. I know it's cleared now, but you definitely max it out. And because it increases all frost damage taken, Frost Firebolt is going to do frost damage. So that's why. That's why you don't really go into Ignite. While it would be a very cool interaction, especially by usage of Brain Freeze procs to kind of get Ignite, to get another dot, that would be kind of great. It won't work that way because of the way Arctic Winds works, and I'm pretty sure not taking Arctic Winds just to get Ignite isn't the way to go. You don't reduce all of your frost damage by 5% to get a fire dot that you can only put up with one spell, right? That's definitely not the move. But that's really it. So I just wanted to, show those little intricacies with, the glyphs and Frostfire Bolt, if that was even a question. I don't know, but I felt like if I thought about it, somebody like me or somebody, more smarter than me, I don't know, somebody might have thought about it and say, hey, why don't they do this? That's the reason. So that's really it for the glyphs and the subspec of Frost Mage.